Introduction to the Third Age. The Third Age of Middle-earth is an epic of great consequence, stretching over 3,000 years and shaping much of the story that fans of Tolkien's world cherish most. It begins in the aftermath of a great conflict, the War of the Last Alliance, where elves and men joined forces to challenge the Dark Lord Sauron. Though victorious, the defeat of Sauron's physical form was only temporary. His spirit endured, and the Third Age is marked by the long shadow he cast across Middle-earth. This era sets the stage for the struggles, alliances, and epic tales that would define the history of the Free Peoples. The Third Age begins with hope mingled with uncertainty. The ancient kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor arise from the remnants of the Last Alliance, entrusted with the protection of Middle-earth against the return of darkness. The Elves, once dominant across the lands, begin to withdraw, their power fading as they sail westward toward the Undying Lands. This slow waning of the Elves marks a turning point, the gradual passing of the old world's magic and myth, making way for the rise of men. The War of the Last Alliance was a pivotal moment that shaped the course of the Third Age. Led by High King Gil-galad of the Númenórean Elves and Elendil of Númenor, the combined forces laid siege to Sauron's stronghold at Barad-dûr. The battle was fierce and costly. Gil-galad and Elendil fell in combat, leaving their sons to inherit their legacies. The One Ring, the source of Sauron's power, was severed from his hand by Isildur, Elendil's son. But Isildur's choice to keep the ring rather than destroy it proved catastrophic, sowing the seeds for future strife. The ring's corrupting influence endured, and its eventual rediscovery would ignite the final conflict of the Third Age. The kingdoms founded after the Last Alliance carried the heavy burden of guarding the peace. Arnor in the north and Gondor in the south were initially strong and prosperous, but both faced mounting challenges. Arnor fractured into smaller realms, struggling against internal strife and external threats, particularly from the Witch King of Angmar. Gondor stood as a mighty bastion, but faced relentless attacks from hostile forces like the Haradrim and Easterlings. Throughout the Third Age, these kingdoms waxed and waned, their fortunes rising and falling with the tides of war and politics. Meanwhile, the Elves held fast in their hidden refuges Rivendell, Lothlórien, and the forest realm of Mirkwood. These enclaves preserved ancient knowledge and magic, offering sanctuary from the encroaching darkness. However, their influence diminished steadily, as many elves chose to leave Middle-earth, embarking on the great journey westward to the Undying Lands, signaling the fading of an age. The Third Age also witnessed the rise and fall of the Dwarven kingdoms, most notably the grandeur and tragic decline of Khazad-dûm beneath the misty mountains. Once a thriving realm of craftsmanship and strength, Khazad-dûm fell to the awakening of the Balrog, an ancient shadow, forcing the dwarves into exile. This event reverberated across Middle-earth, altering alliances and power dynamics. Beyond these great realms, the Shire was established during the Third Age as a peaceful, pastoral region inhabited by hobbits. Initially isolated and little known to the rest of Middle-earth, the hobbits lived quiet lives of farming, feasting, and friendship. Their culture prized comfort and community over power and conquest. Yet, as the age unfolded, the hobbits' destiny became intertwined with the fate of the world, culminating in their critical role during the War of the Ring. A key development during the Third Age was the arrival of the Astareth wizards. Sent by the Valar from the Undying Lands, their mission was to guide and assist the peoples of Middle-earth in resisting Sauron's return. Among them, Gandalf and Saruman played central roles, their actions influencing the unfolding drama in profound ways. While Gandalf remained steadfast in his dedication to aid the Free Peoples, Saruman's fall from grace introduced new challenges. Sauron's resurgence during the Third Age was gradual but relentless. Though stripped of his physical form, he rebuilt his power in secret, gathering legions of orcs, corrupting men, and extending his influence through sorcery and fear. His dark presence tainted vast regions, turning Greenwood the Great into the perilous Mirkwood and corrupting lands like Dol Guldur in southern Mirkwood. The White Council, comprised of elves, wizards, and other leaders, sought to counter his influence but faced formidable obstacles. Throughout the Third Age, Middle-earth was a land of shifting alliances, betrayals, and battles both large and small. Heroes emerged from every race, men like Aragorn, heir to the thrones of Arnor and Gondor, elves like Legolas, whose skill and wisdom were unmatched, dwarves like Gimli, stalwart and brave, and hobbits like Frodo and Sam, whose quiet courage defied all expectations. The age culminated in the War of the Ring, the defining conflict that saw the free peoples unite to destroy the One Ring and defeat Sauron once and for all. This war was not only a military struggle but a test of character, friendship, and sacrifice. The humble hobbits, once overlooked, proved central to the salvation of Middle-earth, their perseverance shining as a beacon of hope amid darkness. With Sauron's fall and the ring's destruction, the Third Age came to a close, ushering in the fourth age, often called the Age of Men. This new era marked the decline of the elves and other immortal beings, and the rise of men as the dominant race, shaping the future of Middle-earth in profound ways. The Third Age is, at its heart, a tale of endurance and transformation. It reflects Tolkien's themes of the passage of time, the battle between good and evil, and the belief that even the smallest and most unlikely individuals can change the course of history. It is a time when legends were forged, alliances tested, and hope persevered against overwhelming darkness. As we explore the Third Age in this series, we will journey through its many chapters, from the founding and struggles of great kingdoms to the quiet lives of the hobbits, from the rise of dark powers to the light of heroes who stood against them. This age is a testament to resilience, courage, and the enduring power of friendship, a saga that continues to inspire and captivate. The Last Alliance of Elves and Men. The Last Alliance of Elves and Men stands as one of the most legendary and defining events of Middle-earth's history, marking the dramatic close of the Second Age and the beginning of the Third. It was a time when ancient powers united to face an overwhelming darkness, a coalition born out of desperation and hope. This alliance and its epic war against the Dark Lord Sauron would shape the course of the ages to come, leaving scars and legacies that echoed for millennia. The roots of the Last Alliance lie in the growing shadow cast by Sauron during the waning years of the Second Age. After his initial defeat at the end of the First Age and long exile, Sauron returned to power in Middle-earth, establishing his fortress in Mordor and seeking to dominate all the free peoples. Through cunning, deceit, and war, he forged alliances with dark creatures and corrupted men to build his armies. His creation of the One Ring, a master ring imbued with a great part of his own power, was a masterstroke intended to enslave the leaders of Middle-earth. Sauron's growing might alarmed the free peoples. Among the greatest among them were the Elves of Lindon and the Númenóreans, the descendants of men blessed with long life and great power. Recognizing the existential threat Sauron posed, these forces put aside centuries of differences and old grievances to form a coalition of final stand to confront the encroaching darkness. This coalition would become known as the Last Alliance of Elves and Men. The alliance was led by two towering figures. Gil-galad, the High King of the Númenórean Elves, was a wise and powerful leader who had witnessed the ravages of Morgoth in the First Age and understood the cost of allowing evil to thrive unchecked. Alongside him was Elendil, the High King of Arnor and Gondor, a descendant of the ancient Númenórean kings who had escaped the downfall of their island kingdom. Together, these leaders rallied their peoples for a war that would decide the fate of Middle-earth. The alliance's forces were vast and formidable, consisting of elven warriors famed for their skill and agility, and the disciplined armies of men from Arnor and Gondor. They were joined by allies from various races and realms, united by a common cause. This union of strength, wisdom, and determination would face Sauron's hordes in a campaign that lasted several years, marked by fierce battles and sieges. The central event of the war was the siege of Barad-dûr, Sauron's dark fortress, located deep within Mordor. For 7 years, the armies of the Last Alliance encircled the fortress, laying siege and battling the legions of orcs and other dark creatures that poured forth. The siege was brutal and unrelenting, a testament to the resolve of the allied forces and the seemingly endless legions of Sauron. Ultimately, the war culminated in a climactic confrontation between the leaders themselves. Gil-galad and Elendil faced Sauron in single combat on the slopes of Mount Doom, the volcanic mountain at the heart of Mordor, where the One Ring was forged. Though both kings fought valiantly, they were slain in the battle. Their deaths, however, were not in vain. Their sacrifice weakened Sauron enough for Isildur, Elendil's son, to seize the One Ring, cutting it from Sauron's hand with the broken sword Narsil. With the loss of the ring, Sauron's physical form was destroyed, and his vast armies scattered. The fortress of Barad-dûr was left in ruins, and for a time, peace returned to Middle-earth. The defeat of Sauron at the end of the Second Age marked a turning point, but it was not an end to his threat. Sauron's spirit endured, bound to the ring, awaiting a chance to rise again. Isildur's decision to claim the ring rather than destroy it would prove disastrous. The ring's corrupting influence grew, causing Isildur to fall to ambush on the slopes of the Gladden Fields. The ring was lost, beginning a long period where its whereabouts were unknown, seeding conflict and despair in the centuries to come. The last alliance's victory brought with it a fragile peace, but the scars of war and loss shaped the fate of the kingdoms. Arnor, under Isildur and his heirs, struggled to maintain its strength in the north, while Gondor, ruled by Isildur's brother Anarion, stood as the principal bulwark against the Shadow's return. The alliance itself was a rare and profound moment of unity among the free peoples. Though the Elves would eventually withdraw westward, and the realms of men would face their own trials, the memory of their combined strength and sacrifice remained a beacon of hope. The last alliance was a testament to what could be achieved when old enmities were set aside to confront a common evil. Legends of this great war passed through generations, immortalized in songs, tales, and histories. The deeds of Gil-galad, Elendil, and Isildur became part of Middle-earth's enduring lore. Their courage, sacrifice, and ultimate tragedy set the stage for the events of the Third Age, the slow, persistent struggle against the shadow that would culminate in the War of the Ring. The last alliance was more than just a military campaign. It was a symbol of unity, courage, and the willingness to confront darkness no matter the cost. Its legacy shaped the political and cultural landscape of Middle-earth for centuries. The alliance's downfall, in many ways, set the tone for the age-to-come world, where the fight against evil would be waged not only with swords and armies but with hope, resilience, and sacrifice. As we look back upon this legendary epic, the story of the last alliance reminds us that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, the combined will of many can shine brightly. The bonds forged in those desperate years inspired generations to come, standing as a timeless example of valor and unity in the face of annihilation. The early years, the rise of Arnor and Gondor. The conclusion of the last alliance marked not only the temporary defeat of Sauron, but also the birth of two great realms of men, Arnor in the north and Gondor in the south. These kingdoms, forged from the surviving Númenóreans who escaped the cataclysmic fall of their island home, stood as bastions against the lingering darkness of Middle-earth during the early years of the Third Age. Their foundation and growth would set the political and cultural landscape for centuries, shaping the fate of the free peoples. After the last alliance's victory and the destruction of Sauron's physical form, Elendil's sons Isildur and Anarion divided their father's realm. Isildur took the northern lands, founding Arnor, while Anarion ruled the southern lands of Gondor. These two kingdoms, though united by blood and purpose, developed distinct characters shaped by geography, challenges, and destiny. Arnor was established in the vast and wild region of Eriador, stretching from the misty mountains to the western shores of the Great Sea. Its capital was Annúminas, a city renowned for its beauty and learning, situated on the shores of Lake Evandum. Arnor was a land of scattered settlements, farmlands, forests, and rolling hills. Its people were hardy and resilient, but the kingdom's great size and diverse terrain made centralized control difficult. From its inception, Arnor faced threats from many fronts, chief among them the Witch King of Angmar, the chief of the Nazgûl, who would become the dark scourge of the north. The Witch King's campaigns against Arnor and its successor realms were relentless. Over centuries, he waged war through shadow and terror, weakening the northern kingdom until it eventually fractured into smaller realms, Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rhudaur. Internal divisions, along with continual assaults from Angmar and other hostile tribes, eroded Arnor's power, and by the late Third Age, only Arthedain remained as a shadow of its former self. Gondor, in contrast, was a kingdom of strength and fortification. Founded in the fertile plains of the Anduin Valley, flanked by the White Mountains and the Bay of Belfalis, Gondor's cities and fortresses were marvels of Númenórean engineering and power. Minas Anor, renamed Minas Tirith, stood as a guardian city, watching over the realm's northern borders, while Osgiliath, once the great capital, lay strategically on the Anduin River. The city of Dal Amroth guarded the southern coasts, and many other fortresses dotted Gondor's landscape. The people of Gondor prided themselves on their military prowess and discipline. As the first bulwark against the armies of Mordor and other enemies, Gondor's warriors fought numerous wars to defend their lands. Their navy patrolled the seas, guarding trade routes and coastal settlements. Unlike Arnor, Gondor's power was concentrated in its cities and its well-maintained infrastructure, which allowed it to endure even through periods of great hardship. Both kingdoms carried the legacy of Númenórean, blessing of long life, great wisdom, and nobility. This legacy brought stability and knowledge, but also a certain pride and isolation. The Númenórean heritage instilled a strong sense of duty to protect Middle-earth, yet it also led to conflicts both within and outside the realm. As centuries passed, Gondor especially experienced periods of decline marked by internal political strife, diminished resources, and threats from external enemies like the Haradrim, Easterlings, and Corsairs of Umbar. Throughout the early Third Age, the Free Peoples maintained fragile alliances. The Elves, though retreating westward, kept strongholds in Rivendell and Lothlórien, and maintained contact with the realms of men. The Dwarves, especially those of the Lonely Mountain and the Blue Mountains, continued their ancient crafts and trade, often engaging with both Arnor and Gondor. However, suspicion and rivalry sometimes marred relations, particularly between dwarves and elves. Culturally, Arnor and Gondor nurtured their own traditions, arts, and scholarship. Gondor, for instance, preserved many ancient texts and histories, becoming a repository of knowledge. The houses of the stewards, charged with ruling during periods without kings, maintained governance and stability, ensuring that the kingdom endured through times of crisis. Arnor's cultural life, centered in cities like Fornost and Númenórean, also flourished for many years, but its gradual fragmentation led to decline and the loss of much knowledge and influence. The northern peoples became more isolated, and over time their legacy faded into legend and myth among other peoples. The early Third Age was also a period marked by ongoing vigilance against the lingering forces of darkness. The Witch King's persistent threat in the north, and the constant pressure from Mordor and its allies in the south, meant that both kingdoms were never truly at peace. The rise of evil cults, raids by wild men, and the emergence of orcs and other dark creatures continued to challenge the stability of Arnor and Gondor. Despite these challenges, the kingdoms endured, upheld by leaders of great courage and wisdom. Kings such as Ondohur of Gondor and Arvedui of Arthedain strove to unite their people and repel darkness, though not always with lasting success. The resilience of the Free Peoples during these centuries would prove critical when the shadow eventually re-emerged in full force. As the Third Age progressed, the balance of power slowly shifted. Arnor's decline contrasted with Gondor's relative endurance, making Gondor the primary human kingdom resisting the shadow's return. The Stewardship of Gondor, a line of noble guardians ruling in the absence of kings, became a defining feature of the age, preserving hope for the eventual return of the rightful king. The early years of the Third Age, therefore, are a story of rebuilding and resilience, a time when men struggled to reclaim their place in the world after great catastrophe. Arnor and Gondor embodied the hope of a new era, but also the burdens of history and the dangers of pride and division. Their rise set the stage for the struggles and triumphs that would come, and their legacies continued to shape the unfolding saga of Middle-earth. The decline of Arnor and the fragmentation of the north. The northern kingdom of Arnor, once a mighty realm established by Elendil and his son Isildur, played a vital role in the early Third Age as a bastion of men against the forces of darkness. Yet, despite its promising beginnings and proud lineage, Arnor's history in the Third Age is largely defined by gradual decline, internal strife, and relentless external threats, culminating in its fragmentation into smaller successor states. This tragic unraveling marked a significant shift in the balance of power in Middle-earth and shaped the political landscape of the North for centuries. Arnor was conceived as a kingdom to restore the glory of Númenor in exile. Its capital, Annúminas, stood on the shores of Lake Evandum, symbolizing the kingdom's strength and unity. The realm stretched across the broad region of Eriador, encompassing fertile lands, dense forests, and strategic mountain passes. Its people were descended from the faithful Númenóreans, who had fled the downfall of their island home, carrying with them a legacy of nobility, longevity, and resilience. However, Arnor faced immediate and persistent threats that tested its durability. Foremost among these was the rise of Angmar, a realm established by the Witch King, the chief of the Nazgûl and Sauron's most dreaded servant. Angmar was situated in the far north, in the cold and rugged lands beyond the Ettenmoors. The Witch King's mission was clear: to destroy Arnor and eliminate the heirs of Elendil, thereby removing a key obstacle to Sauron's dominion. For centuries, the Witch King waged a shadow war against Arnor. His armies of orcs, wolves, and corrupted men ravaged the northern lands, striking fear into the hearts of Arnorian subjects. Villages were burned, roads became unsafe, and the kingdom's defenses were stretched thin. The Witch King's tactics were as much psychological as military, employing terror and subterfuge to weaken Arnor from within. The prolonged war took its toll. The vastness of Arnor made it difficult to defend effectively, and internal divisions began to surface. Political strife, disputes over succession, and rivalries among noble houses weakened the cohesion of the kingdom. As the Witch King's forces advanced, Arnor's unity fractured. By the middle of the Third Age, Arnor was no longer a single unified kingdom. Instead, it split into three smaller realms: Arthedain in the northwest, Cardolan in the southwest, and Rhudaur in the east. Each successor kingdom faced its own challenges and varying degrees of success and failure in resisting the Witch King's assault. Arthedain, the largest and most powerful of the three, maintained its capital at Fornost. Its rulers continued the royal line of Elendil and endeavored to preserve the legacy of Arnor. Arthedain was the last stronghold of the northern kingdom, and its kings remained vigilant against the growing threat from Angmar. Cardolan and Rhudaur, however, suffered more grievously. Cardolan was frequently raided and destabilized, while Rhudaur fell under the influence of the hillmen and became a weak, divided territory. The unity of the northern peoples was shattered, and alliances among the successor states were fragile at best. The Witch King's campaign culminated in the devastating Battle of Fornost in TA 1975. The forces of Angmar laid siege to the city, threatening to annihilate the last bastion of the northern kingdom. In a desperate bid to repel the invaders, the northern kings called upon allies from Gondor and the Elves of Lindon. Together, they won a hard-fought victory, driving back the Witch King's forces. However, the victory was bittersweet. Though the siege was lifted and Fornost saved, the damage was immense. The land was ravaged, the population decimated, and Arnor's power irreparably weakened. The Witch King himself vanished from the north, retreating to Mordor, but his threat was not extinguished. In the centuries that followed, Arthedain struggled to maintain its dwindling strength. Successive kings fought valiantly to uphold the northern realm, but they were beset by both external threats and internal challenges. By the late Third Age, Arthedain was a shadow of its former glory, isolated and besieged on all sides. The final fall of Arnor came with the defeat of King Arvedui, the last king of Arthedain. After a desperate attempt to flee the advancing enemies, Arvedui was lost in a shipwreck amid the icy waters of Foroshel. His disappearance marked the end of the royal line and the effective collapse of the northern kingdom. With Arnor's fall, the northern lands entered a long period of chaos and disarray. The remnants of its people became scattered, giving rise to the Dunedain Rangers' secretive guardians, who watched over the wild lands and protected the heirs of Elendil's line in exile. These rangers, led eventually by Aragorn, maintained a hidden vigil over Eriador, preserving hope for the restoration of the kingdom. The decline and fragmentation of Arnor profoundly affected the geopolitical balance of Middle-earth. It left the north weakened and vulnerable, while Gondor in the south grew in importance as the primary bulwark against the shadow. The loss of Arnor diminished the strength of the free peoples and underscored the enduring menace of the Shadow's servants. Yet, Arnor's legacy persisted in many forms. The histories, songs, and legends of its kings and people lived on, inspiring later generations. The Dunedain's stewardship of the North kept alive the hope that one day the ancient kingdom might be restored. In reflecting on Arnor's decline, we see a story of resilience amid adversity, of a kingdom tested by darkness and division, and ultimately, a narrative of hope preserved through the quiet courage of those who would not let its memory fade. The fragmentation of the North stands as a somber chapter in the Third Age's history, highlighting the costs of war, the fragility of kingdoms, and the enduring spirit of those who fight against the coming darkness. The stewardship of Gondor and the guardianship of the South. With the fall of Númenor and the exile of its survivors to Middle-earth, Gondor was established as the southern kingdom of men, tasked with standing firm against the dark forces of Mordor. Unlike its northern counterpart Arnor, which would suffer decline and fragmentation, Gondor endured as a powerful realm for much of the Third Age. However, as the centuries wore on, the line of kings faded, and governance passed into the hands of the stewards. This transition marked a critical chapter in Middle-earth's history, a time of guardianship, resilience, and unyielding vigilance in the shadow of Mordor. The early years of Gondor's history were marked by the rule of the sons of Elendil, Isildur, and Anarion. Together, they fortified the kingdom, built mighty cities like Osgiliath, Minas Anor, and Minas Ithil, and defended their lands against incursions from Sauron's forces and hostile neighboring peoples such as the Haradrim and Easterlings. The Númenórean bloodline granted their kings long life and great wisdom, and for centuries the kingdom prospered, a shining bastion of civilization. However, as the Third Age progressed, the line of kings began to dwindle. Conflicts, plagues, and wars took their toll. The city of Osgiliath, once the thriving capital, fell into decline and ruin after sustained assaults. Minas Ithil, on the eastern border, was captured by the forces of Mordor and became the fortress of Minas Morgul, a dark and twisted mirror of its former self. These losses eroded Gondor's power and territorial integrity. The death of the last king, Arnor, without an heir, marked the end of the royal line in Gondor. With no direct successor, the stewardship passed to the stewards' noble lords entrusted with ruling in the king's stead until a rightful heir returned. The office of the steward was intended as a temporary guardianship, but it would endure for many centuries, preserving Gondor through its darkest days. The stewards of Gondor became the de facto rulers, responsible for maintaining the kingdom's defenses, managing its resources, and leading its armies against the growing threats from Mordor and beyond. They carried a heavy burden, often facing overwhelming odds as the Shadow sought to reclaim the lands once lost. Their leadership was marked by pragmatism, duty, and an unwavering commitment to safeguarding the realm. Throughout the stewardship, Gondor faced numerous challenges. The southern borders were under constant threat from the Haradrim, fierce warriors from the distant lands to the south who allied with Sauron's forces. The Easterlings, barbaric tribes from the east, also pressed against Gondor's frontiers, seeking plunder and conquest. Internally, the kingdom grappled with political intrigue, resource scarcity, and the difficulties of maintaining unity among diverse peoples. Despite these trials, the stewards managed to preserve Gondor's identity and military strength. Cities like Minas Tirith grew in importance as defensive strongholds and centers of culture. The White City's towering walls and citadels symbolized the enduring spirit of the kingdom. The stewards fostered alliances with the Elves of Rivendell and Lothlórien, as well as with the dwarves, to bolster their defenses. One of the most notable stewards was Denethor II, who ruled during the late Third Age and faced the greatest threat from Sauron's returning power. His tenure was marked by both steadfast defense and tragic despair. Though wise and formidable, Denethor struggled under the weight of impending doom, foreseeing the kingdom's potential downfall but fighting desperately to hold the line. The stewardship period also saw the rise of the Rangers of the North, descended from the remnants of Arnor, who secretly guarded the northern lands and protected the lineage of the kings in exile. These Rangers, including Aragorn, would later play a pivotal role in Gondor's destiny. Culturally, Gondor under the stewards remained a center of learning, tradition, and artistry. The preservation of history, language, and lore was seen as vital to maintaining the kingdom's soul. Its libraries and halls echoed with the memory of Númenor's grandeur, even as the kingdom faced decline. The stewardship was a testament to resilience in the face of encroaching darkness. Though kingship was lost, the spirit of Gondor endured through its guardians, whose vigilance ensured that the kingdom survived long enough for the eventual return of the rightful king. This era illustrates the complexity of leadership and sacrifice, showing how Gondor's fate was shaped not only by kings, but by those who bore the mantle in their absence. The steward's legacy is one of dedication, sorrow, and hope, a beacon in the gathering gloom that set the stage for the great events of the War of the Ring. The role of the Elves in the Third Age. The Elves are the eldest of the children of Iluvatar, beings of great beauty, wisdom, and longevity, who first awoke in Middle-earth during the early days of Arda. Their presence shaped the world's earliest histories, and though their power gradually waned during the Third Age, their role remained vital in the unfolding events of Middle-earth. The Third Age witnessed the twilight of the Elves' dominion over Middle-earth as they slowly withdrew westward, yet their influence, cultural, spiritual, and martial, was felt across all peoples and realms until the very end of this epic. At the dawn of the Third Age, several great elven realms endured. These included Lindon, under the stewardship of Gil-galad, the last High King of the Noldor; Rivendell, ruled by Elrond, half-elven and bearer of ancient wisdom; and Lothlórien, the realm of Galadriel and Celeborn, a sanctuary of ethereal beauty and enduring light. Each of these realms represented bastions of elven strength, knowledge, and resistance to the encroaching shadow of Sauron. Gil-galad's Lindon was situated on the western shores of Middle-earth, a land that had become a refuge for many elves fleeing the spreading darkness. His kingdom was the last stronghold of the High Elves in Middle-earth and a symbol of ancient power and dignity. Gil-galad played a central role in the last alliance of elves and men, a coalition that brought about the temporary downfall of Sauron at the end of the Second Age. His death during this great war was a profound loss to the elven kind, and after his passing, Lindon was ruled by Círdan the Shipwright, a wise and ancient elf who guarded the western shores and facilitated the passage of elves back to the Undying Lands. Rivendell, known also as Imladris, was founded by Elrond after the last alliance. Located deep within a hidden valley east of the Misty Mountains, Rivendell became a haven of rest, learning, and counsel. Elrond was a lord of immense power and knowledge, with lineage tracing back to both elves and men, giving him unique insight into the fates of Middle-earth's peoples. Rivendell served as a crucial meeting place for the Free Peoples, a repository of ancient lore, and a sanctuary during times of turmoil. Throughout the Third Age, Elrond guided many important events, including hosting the Council of Elrond, where the Fellowship of the Ring was formed. Lothlórien, a realm of timeless beauty and enchantment, was governed by Galadriel and Celeborn. Galadriel, one of the mightiest and most revered of the elves remaining in Middle-earth, was a bearer of one of the three rings of the elves. Lothlórien was a realm where the fading light of the elves still glowed brightly, preserved against the creeping darkness. The woods of Lothlórien shimmered with an otherworldly grace, protected by elven magic and vigilance. Galadriel's presence symbolized the deep connection between the elves and the ancient powers of the world. Though their realms were hidden and their numbers diminished, the elves maintained their role as guardians of ancient wisdom, keepers of lore, and protectors of the natural world. They preserved languages, histories, and songs that linked the present to the distant past of Arda, maintaining continuity in a changing world. Their mastery of craftsmanship was unrivaled. Elven smiths forged weapons and artifacts, imbued with power and beauty, treasured by men and elves alike. Throughout the Third Age, the elves increasingly withdrew from the wider world, their hearts turning ever westward toward the undying land. This migration was spurred by weariness of the mortal world's growing shadow and sorrow for its loss. Many elves chose to sail across the sea to Aman, the blessed realm where they first awoke, seeking peace and renewal. This exodus marked the slow fading of elven power in Middle-earth, a poignant theme that reflected the transition from the age of the elves to the age of men. Despite their retreat, the elves continued to aid the free peoples when the need was greatest. They joined forces with men in key battles and wars, lending their unmatched martial skill and ancient magics. Elven warriors fought bravely in the Last Alliance, and later during the War of the Ring, contributing decisively to the struggle against Sauron's forces. Their archery, swordsmanship, and wisdom often turned the tide in critical moments. The elves' relationship with other races was complex but vital. They maintained close ties with the dwarves, though marked by occasional mistrust born of ancient grievances. With men, their connections ranged from alliance and friendship to wariness, particularly toward the Númenóreans, whose pride and ambition sometimes alarmed the Eldar. Nevertheless, the bonds forged through centuries of shared history endured, especially in the fight against the shadow. Spiritually, the elves embodied the lingering light of the world's beginning. Their immortal souls and deep communion with the Valarthe godlike powers who shaped Arda made them symbols of hope and continuity. They were living links to the world's creation, custodians of beauty and truth in a land increasingly scarred by darkness. The waning of the elves also carried a profound sadness. Their departure left Middle-earth diminished, bereft of much of its ancient majesty and magic. The great forests, once home to thriving elven realms, grew silent. Their fading signified the end of an age and the dawning of men's ascendancy, a bittersweet transformation that underscored much of the Third Age's history. By the time of the War of the Ring, the elves were fewer and more reclusive than ever. They played crucial roles in the Fellowship, with Legolas of Mirkwood representing their enduring spirit and participation. After the Ring's destruction and Sauron's final defeat, many elves prepared to leave Middle-earth forever, returning to the Undying Lands to find rest from the sorrows of the world. In conclusion, the elves of the Third Age, though increasingly withdrawn, remained vital as guardians of lore, warriors against darkness, and symbols of an age passing away. Their history during this time reflects the deep themes of Tolkien's legendarium, the passage of time, the struggle between light and shadow, and the enduring power of hope even as the world changes. The elves' legacy endures not only in the tales sung by men and elves alike, but in the very fabric of Middle-earth, where their light once shone brightest. The rise and fall of the kingdom of Rhudaur, the northern lands of Middle-earth in the Third Age, were a region of great significance and great turmoil. At the heart of these lands once stood the unified kingdom of Arnor, founded by Elendil and his sons after the cataclysmic downfall of Númenor. But as the centuries passed, Arnor's vast territories became fragmented into three smaller realms: Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rhudaur. Among these, Rhudaur is often the least spoken of, yet its history is crucial to understanding the dynamics of the north and the eventual downfall of Arnor's heirs. Rhudaur lay to the east of the Misty Mountains, stretching from the upper reaches of the Anduin River to the rugged, often wild lands that bordered the realms of the hillmen and other less civilized folk. The geography of Rhudaur was harsh steep mountains, thick forests, and scattered valleys made it difficult to govern and defend. Its natural barriers provided some protection but also isolated many of its inhabitants, fostering a culture markedly different from that of its neighbors. The population of Rhudaur was a blend of Númenórean settlers and the indigenous hillmen tribes who had dwelt in these lands long before the arrival of the Númenóreans. The hillmen were a hardy and often fierce people, living in small clans and holding customs and beliefs that set them apart from the more civilized Númenórean descendants. This ethnic and cultural divide created tensions within Rhudaur's borders from the very beginning, complicating efforts at centralized governance and cooperation. In the early days following Arnor's division, Rhudaur's rulers attempted to maintain their kingdom's status as part of the Northern Alliance against the rising darkness. They claimed descent from the royal line of Elendil, but their authority was less robust than that of Arthedain or Cardolan. The kingdom's relatively smaller population and challenging terrain limited its economic and military strength, leaving Rhudaur vulnerable to external threats. This vulnerability was exploited by the Witch King of Angmar, the chief of the Nazgul, and the Dark Lord Sauron's most powerful lieutenant. Angmar was established as a realm of shadow and terror in the far north, with the Witch King's single-minded purpose to destroy the heirs of Elendil and obliterate the northern kingdoms that threatened Mordor's resurgence. The Witch King's campaign against Arnor was relentless and ruthless. He sought to undermine the unity of the northern realms by sowing discord and forcing submission. Rhudaur, due to its precarious position and internal divisions, fell increasingly under Angmar's influence. Whether through intimidation, bribery, or open conquest, the Witch King gradually brought Rhudaur into his sphere of control. The alignment of Rhudaur with Angmar was a turning point in the kingdom's fate. The hillmen, who were already separate culturally from the Númenórean settlers, found themselves drawn further into the Witch King's dominion. Some clans became his willing allies, while others resisted but were overpowered or marginalized. This fracture within the population deepened social divisions and eroded loyalty to the northern crown. Rhudaur's collaboration with Angmar put it at odds with the other successor kingdoms, Arthedain and Cardolan, which remained committed to opposing the Witch King. This internal schism crippled any possibility of a united northern front, weakening resistance and enabling Angmar's forces to press their advantage. Politically, Rhudaur's rulers lost much of their independence, becoming effectively puppet lords under the Witch King's sway. The capital cities and fortifications fell into disrepair or were seized by Angmar's armies. Trade and agriculture declined as insecurity and warfare ravaged the countryside, leading to economic hardship and depopulation in some areas. The decline of Rhudaur had profound repercussions for the fate of Arnor and the free peoples of the north. With Rhudaur effectively lost, the northern realm's ability to resist the Witch King's forces was diminished. This emboldened Angmar's campaigns against Arthedain and Cardolan, ultimately contributing to their collapse. Rhudaur's fall illustrates how internal division and susceptibility to corruption can be as dangerous to a kingdom as external enemies. The cultural tensions between the Númenórean descended rulers and the hillmen population created openings for the Witch King's manipulations, demonstrating the importance of unity and strong governance in the face of existential threats. Despite its tragic downfall, Rhudaur's story was not entirely forgotten. Its ruins and dark legacy were remembered by the Rangers of the North, descendants of the Northern Kingdom's survivors who kept vigil over the wild lands. They spoke of Rhudaur as a cautionary tale, warning of the perils of disunity and the consequences of surrendering to darkness. The eventual defeat of Angmar by the combined forces of Arthedain, Gondor, and their allies in the Battle of Fornost was a significant victory, but came too late to save Rhudaur. The kingdom remained under shadow, a land marked by decay and the scars of war. In summary, Rhudaur's rise and fall is a poignant chapter in the history of the North. From its origins as a proud Númenórean kingdom to its fall under the shadow of Angmar, Rhudaur exemplifies the challenges faced by Middle-earth's realms, the necessity of unity, the dangers of internal division, and the relentless threat posed by the forces of darkness. Its story shaped the fate of the northern lands and set the stage for the later struggles of the free peoples against the shadow. The Rangers of the North and their Vigil. In the aftermath of the great kingdom of Arnor's decline and fragmentation, the northern lands of Middle-earth were plunged into chaos and peril. The once proud realm, founded by Elendil and his sons in the wake of Númenor's destruction, had splintered into smaller, weaker states that soon fell to internal strife, invasion, and shadowy corruption. Amidst this turmoil, a quiet yet relentless force, emerged to guard the wild and dangerous lands of the North, the Rangers of the North. These secretive, hardy folk were the unseen protectors of the remnants of Arnor's heritage, and the shield against the darkness that threatened to engulf all free peoples. The Rangers traced their bloodline directly to the Númenórean kings, heirs to Elendil's noble line, which once ruled over vast realms in both the north and south. When the last king of Arnor, Arvedui, disappeared and the kingdom crumbled under the weight of Angmar's assaults, many of his descendants went into hiding. These descendants became known as the Dunedain, men of the West, marked by longevity, noble bearing, and a deep sense of duty to preserve their ancestral lands and legacy. Living primarily in scattered, isolated groups, the Rangers operated across a vast swath of territory. Their patrols covered the wild lands of Arthedain, compassing the ruins of Arnor, the Shire, Bree, the Barrow Downs, the Weather Hills, and the foothills of the Misty and Blue Mountains. This expanse was a land of great beauty but also great danger, beset by orcs, wolves, wild men, and the lingering servants of Angmar. The Rangers were masters of stealth, wilderness, survival, and guerrilla warfare. They were trained to move silently through the forests, to read the signs of nature and tracks left by friend and foe alike. Their weapons of choice were often bows and swords, and their skills with these arms were legendary. But their greatest strength lay in their knowledge of the land and their unwavering commitment to their cause. Though few in number, the Rangers were instrumental in keeping the northern lands safe from the encroaching darkness. They guarded the borders of the Shire, a peaceful region inhabited by hobbits who cherished their quiet, agrarian life and were largely unaware of the threats lurking beyond. The Rangers' silent watch ensured that the hobbits remained safe from marauders and evil forces that sought to exploit the Shire's innocence. The Rangers also guarded ancient pathways, ancient watchtowers, and hidden refuges that had once belonged to the kings of Arnor. Many of these sites had fallen into ruin or were overgrown, but the Rangers preserved their knowledge and often used these places as bases or safe havens during their patrols. They maintained secret communication networks through signs, codes, and trusted messengers, ensuring coordination across vast distances despite their scattered numbers. Among the Rangers, one figure stands supreme in both legend and history: Aragorn, son of Arathorn. Raised in Rivendell under the care of Elrond, Aragorn was trained in the lore and skills of the Rangers from a young age. Bearing the bloodline of Isildur, he embodied the hope of Arnor's restoration. Aragorn's leadership united the scattered Dunedain and inspired renewed resistance against the darkness of Mordor. His journey from a lone ranger known as Strider to the rightful king of Gondor and Arnor symbolizes the fulfillment of a long-awaited promise. The life of a ranger was often harsh and lonely. They traveled alone or in small bands, constantly vigilant against ambushes and the dangers of wild beasts or hostile men. Their nights were spent in watchful rest, always alert for signs of danger. Despite their trials, they bore their burden with quiet dignity, fueled by a deep love for their land and people. The Rangers' role extended beyond mere guardianship. They acted as messengers and scouts for the free peoples, carrying vital intelligence about enemy movements and threats. Their knowledge of the terrain and secrets of the wilds made them invaluable in planning military campaigns and protecting trade routes. Their relationship with other peoples of Middle-earth was complex. The hobbits, for example, saw the Rangers as mysterious and sometimes fearsome figures, but also as protectors. The Rangers respected the hobbits' peaceful ways and sought to keep their world undisturbed. The Rangers also maintained alliances with the realms of men, elves, and dwarves, often sharing intelligence and support, especially as the shadow of Mordor grew. The legacy of the Rangers of the North culminated in the War of the Ring. Their vigilance and bravery provided crucial support during this critical conflict. Aragorn's leadership was pivotal in uniting the free peoples and guiding the Fellowship of the Ring. The Rangers fought alongside Gondor's armies and helped secure victory over Sauron's forces. After the war, with the return of the king and the restoration of the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor, the need for the Rangers as a secretive, wandering force diminished. Yet their contribution was immortalized in songs and stories. The Rangers' history stands as a testament to courage, sacrifice, and hope demonstrating that even those hidden in shadows can shine brightest in times of darkness. In essence, the Rangers of the North were the silent guardians of a fading world, the last line of defense for the free peoples against the darkness that threatened to consume Middle-earth. Their vigilance kept alive the flame of hope and ensured that the legacy of the ancient kings would one day be restored. The kingdom of Arthedain and its struggles. In the shadowed history of the northern lands of Middle-earth, the kingdom of Arthedain stands as the last flicker of Númenórean power and pride after the fracturing of Arnor. Born from the division of a once great realm, Arthedain's story is one of valiant resistance, harsh trials, and a gradual, yet tragic decline that encapsulates the struggles faced by the free peoples against the mounting darkness of the Third Age. The origins of Arthedain trace back to t.a. 861, a time when the united kingdom of Arnor, established by Elendil and his sons at the dawn of the Second Age's close, fractured into three distinct realms: Arthedain in the west, Cardolan in the south, and Rhudaur to the east. This division was not the result of external conquest, but rather of internal discord and logistical difficulties in ruling the expansive northern territories. Arthedain emerged as the westernmost and, arguably, the most potent of these successor states, inheriting the title of the rightful heir to the ancient line of Númenórean kings descending from Isildur. Arthedain's domain stretched west of the Trollshaws and along the banks of the Brandywine River, extending towards the Blue Mountains and bordered by the Misty Mountains to the east. The kingdom's heart was centered around the fortified city of Fornost, also known as the Northern Watchan, imposing fortress city designed to serve as a bulwark against the ever-looming threat from Angmar to the north. The city's stone walls, towers, and battlements bore silent testimony to the kingdom's enduring defiance. The early years of Arthedain's existence were marked by determination to maintain the legacy of Arnor and preserve the peace of the north. The kings who ruled this realm bore the heavy mantle of responsibility for the defense of their lands against both external enemies and the perils posed by fractured northern politics. Among these rulers were figures such as King Argileb I, who faced early incursions from Angmar, and his successor Argileb II, whose reign was punctuated by continual warfare. Angmar, the dark realm founded by the witch, King Sauron's chief lieutenant, became the greatest menace to Arthedain. Established in the far north, Angmar sought to eradicate all traces of Númenórean authority and destroy the heirs of Elendil. The witch king's armies were numerous and cruel, composed of orcs, wild men, and other fell creatures bent on domination. Arthedain's kings led their people through decades of brutal conflict. The witch king's forces mounted relentless assaults on the kingdom's borders, raiding villages, burning crops, and devastating the countryside. Each siege of Fornost tested the mettle of the defenders, who repeatedly repelled the invaders through skill and sheer resolve. However, the war exacted a severe toll. The kingdom's population declined due to casualties and displacement. Trade routes were disrupted, leading to economic hardships. Many outlying settlements were abandoned or fell into ruin. Even with the support of allies, the kingdom's resources grew strained, and the hope for a lasting peace seemed ever more elusive. In addition to the external threat, Arthedain faced challenges from within. The collapse of its eastern neighbor, Rhudaur, into the hands of Angmar left Arthedain's flank dangerously exposed. The hillmen and wild tribes of Rhudaur, now aligned with the Witch King, frequently crossed into Arthedain's lands, sowing further discord. The southern neighbor, Cardolan, likewise suffered devastating attacks and internal decline, leaving Arthedain isolated. This geopolitical fragmentation hindered coordinated defense efforts, weakening the northern free peoples against Angmar's growing power. Despite these hardships, the kings of Arthedain remained steadfast. King Arvedui, the final ruler of Arthedain, epitomized this resilience. Ascending the throne in the late Third Age, Arvedui faced a kingdom beleaguered by continuous war and diminishing hope. Determined to preserve his realm, he sought alliances, appealing to Gondor for aid, and attempting to maintain the kingdom's sovereignty amid the darkness. Arthedain endured repeated sieges under Arvedui's reign, withstanding the Witch King's assaults for decades. Yet the relentless pressure wore down the city's defenses and morale. In TA 1974, after a prolonged siege, Angmar's forces finally breached Fornost's walls, sacking the city and scattering its people. King Arvedui fled northward to the ice bay of Forachel, seeking refuge among the hardy Losoth people. It was there, amidst the bitter winter and treacherous ice, that Arvedui's fate was sealed. His ship was lost in a great storm, and he vanished beneath the frozen waves, marking the symbolic end of Arthedain's royal line and the kingdom itself. The fall of Arthedain sent shockwaves throughout the north. The collapse of the last bastion of Númenórean power left the lands of Arnor a wilderness, overrun by orcs, wolves, and all manner of dark creatures. The remnants of the kingdom's people scattered, some joining the rangers of the north, who continued to keep vigil over the ruined lands. Yet even in defeat, Arthedain's legacy endured. The spirit of the kingdom lived on through the Dunedain Rangers, descendants of its kings and guardians of its traditions. They kept alive the hope that one day the rightful king would return to reclaim his heritage and restore the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor. Arthedain's struggles highlight the themes of resilience and loss woven throughout the Third Age's history. Its story is one of valiant defense against overwhelming darkness, the fragility of kingdoms amidst war and betrayal, and the enduring hope that light can overcome shadow. In conclusion, the kingdom of Arthedain stands as a testament to the courage and determination of the free peoples. Though ultimately lost to the forces of Angmar, its history and spirit shaped the destiny of Middle-earth, setting the stage for the rise of the last king and the final victory over darkness in the War of the Ring. The Kingdom of Cardolan and its decline. In the shadowed tapestry of Middle-earth's northern history, the Kingdom of Cardolan emerges as a poignant and essential chapter in the saga of the fractured realm of Arnor. After the Great Kingdom splintered in TA 861 into three successor states, Arthedain, Rhudaur, and Cardolan each sought to carry on the legacy of Númenórean dominion and to safeguard the lands from the relentless encroachment of shadow. Cardolan, situated in the southern reaches of Arnor's former domain, held a strategic and fertile expanse, but it too faced the grave challenges that would define the North's destiny in the Third Age. Cardolan's domain stretched from the rolling hills and river valleys west of the Baranduin, also known as the Brandywine River, eastwards to the Misty Mountains foothills. Its lands encompassed a variety of terrains, fertile plains, wooded uplands, and small scattered settlements. This landscape was both a boon and a burden. The rich soil supported agriculture and growing communities, yet its proximity to wild lands and mountain passes exposed it to raids and invasions. The people of Cardolan were chiefly descendants of Númenórean settlers who had survived the fall of Arnor, alongside native folk and the remnants of the hillmen. The cultural fabric was complex. While the Númenórean heritage provided a noble lineage and a sense of order, the mix with indigenous tribes sometimes led to friction. Nonetheless, Cardolan maintained a distinct identity, striving to uphold the traditions of the Lost Kingdom. From its inception, Cardolan's rulers endeavored to preserve their sovereignty and defend their realm. Unlike Arthedain, whose kingship and lineages are well documented, Cardolan's royal house is more obscure, with fewer records surviving the ravages of time and war. Yet the kingdom was recognized as a key member of the Northern Alliance, resisting the darkness of Angmar and its Witch King. The Witch King's realm, Angmar, lay to the north and northeast of Cardolan, and was the primary existential threat to all the northern kingdoms. The Witch King, Sauron's foremost servant, sought to eradicate the heirs of Elendil and erase Númenórean influence from Middle-earth. His forces included orcs, wildmen, trolls, and dark sorcerers, all united under his will. Cardolan's location placed it at the front line of Angmar's campaigns. Its borders were vulnerable to frequent raids, especially from orcs and allied hillmen who had fallen under Angmar's sway. These raids devastated outlying villages, destroyed crops, and disrupted trade, causing hardship and insecurity among the population. In addition to external threats, Cardolan grappled with internal difficulties. The mingling of cultures sometimes bred mistrust and factionalism. Political instability within the kingdom weakened centralized authority, leaving local lords to fend for themselves. This fragmentation hindered coordinated defense efforts, making Cardolan more susceptible to invasion. Despite these challenges, Cardolan remained a vital realm for many centuries. It was a crucial part of the Northern Alliance alongside Arthedain, and, until its fall, Rhudaur. Together, these kingdoms attempted to stem the tide of Angmar's aggression and preserve the free lands of the north. The kingdom maintained diplomatic relations with other free peoples, including the Elves of Lindon, the Dwarves of the Blue Mountains, and the southern kingdom of Gondor. These alliances brought some measure of military and economic support, helping Cardolan resist Angmar's forces through coordinated campaigns and shared intelligence. However, as the Third Age progressed, Cardolan's fortunes waned. The relentless pressure from Angmar, combined with internal strife and the isolation caused by Rhudaur's collapse, sapped the kingdom's strength. Orc invasions became more frequent and devastating, while the Witch King's sorcery and terror undermined the morale of Cardolan's people. By the late Third Age, Cardolan's cities and fortresses were vulnerable. Many were besieged or abandoned. The kingdom's population dwindled as refugees fled to neighboring realms or sought shelter in the wilderness. Trade routes became unsafe, and the kingdom's economy faltered. The decisive blow came around TA 1409, when Angmar's armies launched a major campaign to crush the remaining free peoples of the north. Cardolan was overwhelmed. Its defenses were breached, towns sacked, and its lands left desolate. The kingdom ceased to exist as a political entity, its territories taken over by orcs, wildmen, and other dark forces. The survivors of Cardolan did not disappear entirely. Many joined the Rangers of the North, who carried on the legacy of Arnor's kings in secret, patrolling the wild lands and protecting the remaining freefolk. Others assimilated into neighboring communities or fled southward to safer lands. The fall of Cardolan had far-reaching consequences. It not only marked the near-total collapse of Arnor's northern successor kingdoms, but also allowed Angmar to dominate the north for decades. The Witch King's power remained unchallenged until the eventual defeat at the Battle of Fornost, where a coalition of Gondor, Arthedain's remnants, and elven forces routed Angmar's armies. Despite its demise, Cardolan's legacy persisted. Tales of its kings, warriors, and common folk survived in oral traditions and were kept alive by the Rangers and the Elves. Its history is a testament to the bravery and endurance of the free peoples amid overwhelming darkness. Cardolan's story underscores the fragility of kingdoms facing internal division and external threats. Its rise and fall are woven into the broader narrative of Middle-earth's Third Age, reflecting the struggle between light and shadow, hope and despair. In conclusion, Cardolan was more than just a footnote in the annals of Middle-earth. It was a realm of significance and resilience, striving to uphold the legacy of Númenor and protect its people against the growing menace of Angmar. Its decline and destruction remind us of the heavy cost paid by those who stand against darkness and the enduring spirit that carries hope even in the darkest time. The fall of Angmar and the Battle of Fornost. For nearly 6 centuries during the Third Age, the shadow of Angmar loomed large over the northern realms of Middle-earth. Angmar, a realm of darkness and dread, was established by the Witch King, the Lord of the Nazgul, and Sauron's most feared lieutenanto, extinguished the remnants of the ancient kingdom of Arnor, and to crush the line of Númenórean kings that still survived in the north. Its rise, reign, and eventual fall are crucial chapters in the history of the Third Age, marking the relentless struggle between light and shadow and setting the stage for the final battles that would decide Middle-earth's fate. The origins of Angmar are shrouded in mystery, but it is generally accepted that its foundation took place sometime around the year TA 1300. The Witch King, who had long served Sauron since the Second Age, was given this dark realm as a base of operations to wage war against the northern kingdoms. Angmar's very name, meaning Iron Home, reflected the unyielding strength and cruelty that characterized its rule. From its fortress strongholds hidden in the icy Northlands, Angmar unleashed a campaign of terror against the three successor kingdoms of Arnor, Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rhudaur. Rhudaur fell first, corrupted and conquered, its people either slain or subjugated as thralls to Angmar's will. Cardolan and Arthedain resisted fiercely, but the Witch King's armies, bolstered by orcs, trolls, wild men, and sorcery, continued their unrelenting assaults. Angmar's influence extended like a shadow across the northern lands, bringing devastation and despair. Villages were razed, farms burned, and trade routes cut off. The forces of Angmar were not merely military but also psychological, spreading fear and discord among the free peoples, breaking their morale. The Witch King's sorcery could cloud minds and sow mistrust, making resistance all the harder. Arthedain, the last stronghold of Númenórean power in the north, bore the brunt of these attacks. Its capital, Fornost, became the focal point of Angmar's wrath. For centuries, Fornost's towering walls and stout defenders held firm against repeated sieges. Kings like Argaleb I, Argaleb II, and later Arvedui led their people with courage and determination, but the pressure was relentless. Despite these overwhelming challenges, the free peoples did not surrender. In the late Third Age, as Angmar's power reached its zenith, a critical alliance formed between the northern remnants and the southern kingdom of Gondor, as well as the Elves of Lindon. Gil-galad, High King of the Noldor Elves, and Arnor, the Steward and Prince of Gondor, marshaled their forces to confront the Witch King's menace. This coalition understood that Angmar's threat was not merely local but part of the larger shadow cast by Sauron over Middle-earth. The liberation of the North was essential to breaking the Dark Lord's hold on the world. The decisive confrontation, known as the Battle of Fornost, took place in TA 1975, near the ruins of the city that had withstood centuries of siege. This battle was one of the greatest conflicts of the Third Age, pitting the combined armies of Gondor, the Elves, and the Rangers of the North against the forces of Angmar. The battle was ferocious and bitter. Angmar's legions, led personally by the Witch King, surged against the allied forces with ferocity. Orcs, trolls, and dark warriors clashed with the valorous defenders, and the skies echoed with the cries of battle. Gil-galad and Arnor fought bravely alongside the Dunedain Rangers, whose intimate knowledge of the land and guerrilla tactics proved invaluable. The Rangers struck swiftly, disrupting enemy formations and guarding the flanks. The Witch King himself, a terrifying figure clad in black armor and wielding terrible power, seemed invincible. His presence on the battlefield struck fear into the hearts of many. Yet despite his dark sorcery and martial prowess, the tide of battle gradually turned. The combined strength and unity of the free peoples began to overwhelm Angmar's forces. The Witch King's army faltered, his lines breaking under the relentless assault. Ultimately, he was defeated in combat and forced to flee, his grip on the north shattered. Though the Witch King would later reappear during the War of the Ring, the Battle of Fornost effectively ended Angmar's reign. The realm of shadow dissolved, and the lands once gripped by terror were liberated. The aftermath of the battle was bittersweet. Fornost lay in ruins, and the northern kingdoms that had fought so valiantly were far from restored. The peoples of the north faced a long road of rebuilding, with many settlements destroyed and populations displaced. However, the victory at Fornost preserved the possibility of renewal. The Rangers of the North continued their vigilant watch, guarding the wild lands and preserving the hope that one day the kingdoms of Arnor might be restored under a rightful king. The defeat of Angmar also served as a powerful symbol of resistance against darkness, a reminder that even the greatest evils can be overcome through unity and courage. In the centuries that followed, this legacy inspired many, especially Aragorn, the heir of Isildur and leader of the Rangers, who would ultimately reclaim the throne and usher in a new era of peace. In conclusion, the fall of Angmar and the Battle of Fornost stand as a testament to the resilience of the free peoples of Middle-earth. This pivotal moment marked the turning of the tide against the forces of evil, laying the foundation for the final victory over Sauron in the War of the Ring and the restoration of the kingdoms of men. The role of the Elves in the Third Age. Throughout the vast and complex history of Middle-earth, the Elves occupy a singular place of reverence and mystery. As the firstborn of Ilúvatar's children, their story spans the earliest ages and echoes profoundly into the Third Age. Although their numbers dwindled and many sailed westward to the Undying Lands, their influence during the Third Age remained pivotal. The Elves were guardians of ancient wisdom, masters of lore and magic, and fierce warriors who continually shaped the fate of Middle-earth's free peoples. Their role during this age is an intricate tapestry woven of bravery, sacrifice, cultural preservation, and a gradual but poignant fading from the lands they once ruled and loved. At the dawn of the Third Age, the Elves were already ancient beyond mortal reckoning. Many of the great elven realms of the First Age had been lost, their histories marked by tragic wars and betrayals against Morgoth, the original Dark Lord. The profound sorrow of those losses weighed heavily upon the Elves who remained in Middle-earth. Nevertheless, they held fast to their purpose, to guard the lands from the growing shadow of Sauron and to preserve the light and beauty of a world increasingly under threat. Among the most significant elven realms during the Third Age was Lindon, located on the western shores of Middle-earth, stretching from the Grey Havens northwards. Lindon was ruled by Gil-galad, the last High King of the Noldor in Middle-earth, a figure renowned for his wisdom, valor, and deep commitment to opposing the Dark Lord. Gil-galad's reign was marked by constant vigilance and military preparedness as Angmar's shadow loomed ever closer. Lindon was not only a military stronghold but also a center of elven culture and magic. The Elves of Lindon wielded powerful magics and bore 2 of the 3 elven rings of power, gifted by Celebrimbor and hidden from Sauron's corrupting grasp. These rings, Narya and Nenya, preserved and protected the realm, slowing the decay of the land and uplifting the spirits of its inhabitants. Under Gil-galad's leadership, Lindon became a beacon of hope and strength, rallying elven and human allies alike. Gil-galad's alliances extended beyond the borders of Lindon. Foreseeing the growing threat of Angmar and later Sauron's return, he forged ties with the northern kingdoms of Arnor and with Gondor in the south. His role in the Battle of Fornost, the decisive battle where the Witch King's forces were defeated, was critical. Alongside the armies of Gondor and the Rangers of the North, Gil-galad led elven forces with unmatched courage and strategy, helping to break the grip of Angmar on the northern lands. Equally important was the realm of Rivendell and Lothlórien, hidden refuge founded by Elrond half-elven during the Second Age. Throughout the Third Age, Rivendell served as a sanctuary for all free peoples, men, elves, dwarves, and even hobbits. Elrond's role as a healer, sage, and leader was indispensable in the ongoing struggle against darkness. Rivendell was a repository of ancient knowledge, housing extensive libraries, scrolls, and histories that chronicled the events of the ages. Elrond's foresight was instrumental during critical moments, including the gathering at the Council of Elrond in TA 3018. This council brought together representatives of all the free peoples to decide the fate of the One Ring, setting in motion the quest to destroy it. Elrond's counsel was wise and measured, drawing on centuries of experience and insight into the machinations of Sauron and the nature of power. The elven realm of Lothlórien, presided over by Lady Galadriel and Lord Celeborn, was perhaps the most enchanting and mysterious sanctuary of the Third Age. Known as the Golden Wood, Lothlórien existed in a timeless state, preserved by the power of the elven ring Nenya, borne by Galadriel herself. The realm was a symbol of hope and beauty, a place where the burdens of the world seemed lighter, and where the light of the Eldar still shone brightly. Galadriel, one of the mightiest and wisest of the Eldar, was a figure of immense power and grace. Her history stretched back to the First Age, and her experience was a guiding light in the Third Age's darkest hours. Galadriel offered sanctuary and aid to many, including the Fellowship of the Ring, providing them shelter, counsel, and gifts that would aid them on their perilous journey. Her role was both spiritual and strategic, reinforcing the bonds between elves, men, and other free peoples. To the northeast lay the Woodland Realm, the kingdom of the Sylvan Elves under King Thranduil. Though less involved in the affairs of the broader world, the woodland realm was a significant power, guarding the forests of Mirkwood from the encroachment of evil creatures such as spiders and orcs. The Sylvan Elves were renowned archers and trackers, skilled in guerrilla warfare and intimately connected to the natural world. The Elves' contribution to the Third Age extended beyond their kingdoms and martial prowess. They preserved ancient arts, songs, languages, and histories that might otherwise have been lost. Their knowledge of the rings of power, their craftsmanship in making weapons and artifacts, and their guardianship of the natural order were integral to maintaining balance in Middle-earth. Throughout the Third Age, the Elves formed crucial alliances with men and dwarves. These relationships were often complex, reflecting histories of cooperation and rivalry, but united by a common cause against Sauron's growing threat. The Elves' presence among the Free Peoples was a symbol of continuity, linking the heroic past of the First and Second Ages to the emerging Age of Men. However, the Third Age also witnessed the gradual fading of the Elves from Middle-earth. Many chose to sail west to the Undying Lands, seeking peace and healing from the wounds inflicted by centuries of war and sorrow. This fading was deeply mourned by the peoples of Middle-earth, who lost their wise counselors and powerful allies. Yet even as their presence diminished, the legacy of the Elves endured. Their stories, songs, and deeds became woven into the very fabric of Middle-earth's culture. Their influence shaped the events that would lead to the defeat of Sauron and the dawn of the Fourth Age. In conclusion, the Elves of the Third Age were more than mere participants in the unfolding drama. They were the keepers of ancient wisdom, the bearers of light, and the steadfast guardians against encroaching darkness. Their realms, Lindon, Rivendell, Lothlórien, and the woodland realm stood as bastions of hope and resistance. Though the Age of Elves was waning, their impact was profound, shaping the fate of Middle-earth in ways both seen and unseen, and guiding the Free Peoples toward a future free of shadow. The rise and fall of the Kingdom of Gondor. The Kingdom of Gondor, the greatest realm of men in Middle-earth during the Third Age, stood as a shining beacon of hope and power, enduring through centuries of turmoil, glory, and decline. Founded in the aftermath of Númenor's catastrophic downfall, Gondor represented the continuation of Númenórean civilization and the noble heritage of the faithful. Its history in the Third Age is a sweeping epic, a story of valiant kings and steadfast stewards, heroic battles and devastating losses, and an unyielding struggle against the darkness that sought to consume all. The origins of Gondor trace back to the twilight of the Second Age, when the survivors of Númenor, led by Elendil and his sons Isildur and Anarion, fled the destruction of their island home. Landing on the shores of Middle-earth, they established the kingdoms of Arnor in the north and Gondor in the south as bastions against the growing shadow of Sauron. Gondor was established in the fertile lands between the great rivers Anduin and the Bay of Belfalis, extending eastward toward the Mountains of Shadow and southward along the White Mountains. Isildur and Anarion, the twin founders of Gondor, laid the foundations for a kingdom that would endure for over 3 millennia. They built great cities to serve as fortresses and centers of governance. Minas Anor, later renamed Minas Tirith, was constructed as the city of the sun and the seat of power, while Minas Ithil, the Tower of the Moon, was established as a watchtower overlooking the borders of Mordor. These cities symbolized Gondor's vigilance and its role as the bulwark protecting the free lands from the encroaching darkness. Gondor's early centuries were marked by expansion and consolidation. Its armies pushed back against native peoples and hostile forces, extending the kingdom's influence along the coasts and into the inland territories. Trade and culture flourished, and Gondor became a beacon of civilization, renowned for its skilled smiths, architects, and scholars. The kings of Gondor ruled with justice and strength, supported by a noble class loyal to their cause. However, Gondor's position was never unchallenged. The threat of Mordor, the dark realm ruled by Sauron, loomed ever large. Throughout the Third Age, Gondor found itself in almost constant conflict with Sauron's forces, orcs, Haradrim, Easterlings, and other dark creatures. The loss of Minas Ithil to Sauron's armies during the siege of Minas Ithil in TA 2002 was a crushing blow. The city was renamed Minas Morgul, the Tower of Sorcery, becoming a bastion of evil and the seat of the Witch King of Angmar, Sauron's chief lieutenant. As the centuries passed, Gondor faced internal struggles and external threats that weakened its might. The line of kings became tenuous after the kin strife, a civil war that fractured the realm and led to the loss of territory and influence. Following the death of the last king, Arnor, who vanished in battle against the Witch King, the Stewardship became the de facto ruling authority. The stewards of Gondor governed the kingdom in the king's absence, preserving order and defending the realm from constant attacks. The Stewardship era was marked by both resilience and decline. While the stewards held Gondor together, the kingdom's power waned. Wars with the Haradrim in the south, the Easterlings in the east, and occasional raids from orcs and other dark forces took a toll. The White Mountains, which once served as natural defenses, became battlegrounds. The economy, culture, and population suffered from years of strife and hardship. Despite this decline, Gondor's military remained formidable. The city of Minas Tirith, perched on its 7 levels beneath the White Mountains, was a marvel of defensive architecture. Its walls and gates withstood countless sieges, and its armies, led by the stewards, fought with determination to protect their lands. The most significant challenge came during the final years of the Third Age, with the return of Sauron in full strength. The War of the Ring brought the greatest crisis Gondor had ever faced. The steward Denethor II, burdened by despair and the weight of responsibility, struggled to maintain morale and unity. Minas Tirith became the focal point of Sauron's assault, culminating in the epic Battle of the Pelennor Fields. This battle was a turning point, not only for Gondor, but for all of Middle-earth. The forces of Mordor, including vast armies of orcs, Haradrim, and Easterlings, besieged the city. Gondor's defenders were nearly overwhelmed. However, the timely arrival of the riders of Rohan, led by King Theoden, and the intervention of Aragorn, the heir of Isildur, turned the tide. Aragorn's leadership and the arrival of reinforcements from the southern kingdoms restored hope and drove back the armies of darkness. Aragorn's ascent to the throne marked the restoration of the line of kings and the beginning of a new era. As King Elisar, he united Gondor and Arnor, ushering in the Fourth Age of peace and prosperity. Under his reign, the scars of war slowly healed, old alliances were reforged, and the shadow of Sauron was finally lifted. The rise and fall of Gondor throughout the Third Age encapsulate the enduring struggle between light and darkness, hope and despair. It is a story of noble kings and stewards who bore the heavy burden of leadership, of warriors who fought bravely against overwhelming odds, and of a people who refused to surrender their land and legacy. In summary, Gondor's history during the Third Age is a testament to resilience amid adversity. From its proud beginnings as a shining kingdom of men to its twilight under the stewards, and finally its renewal under King Aragorn, Gondor's saga is intertwined with the fate of Middle-earth itself. The kingdom's endurance and ultimate restoration symbolize the triumph of courage, unity, and hope over the forces of shadow. The decline of Arnor and the rise of the Rangers of the North. The northern kingdom of Arnor holds a somber yet pivotal place in the history of Middle-earth's Third Age. Established in the wake of Númenor's downfall, Arnor was the first great realm founded by the faithful Númenórean survivors. For centuries, it stood as a bastion of Númenórean power and culture in the north, an enduring symbol of hope and civilization in a wild and often dangerous land. Yet Arnor's fate would diverge sharply from that of its sister kingdom Gondor in the south. While Gondor grew and maintained its strength, Arnor slowly fractured, weakened by internal strife and external threats, until it finally fell to ruin. However, from the ashes of Arnor rose the legendary Rangers of the North Guardians, who quietly preserved the legacy of the kingdom and guarded the lands of Eriador from the forces of darkness. Arnor was founded in TA 3320 by Elendil the Tall, one of the great Númenórean lords who escaped the cataclysm that destroyed Númenor. Following the destruction, Elendil and his sons Isildur and Anarion fled to Middle-earth. While Isildur and Anarion established the kingdom of Gondor in the south, Elendil chose to settle the northern lands of Eriador. Here, in the shadow of the misty mountains and along the fertile banks of the river Baranduin, the Brandywine, Arnor rose as the northern counterpart to Gondor. At its inception, Arnor was a mighty realm. The Númenórean descendants brought with them advanced knowledge of building, governance, and warfare. The kingdom stretched across a vast territory, encompassing the lands that would later become known as the Shire, the Weather Hills, and the Grey Havens. The ancient city of Annúminas, on the shores of Lake Evendim, served as the capital and was a jewel of Númenórean architecture and culture. For many generations, Arnor thrived. Its kings ruled wisely, maintaining peace and prosperity. Trade routes opened, and the kingdom forged alliances with the various free peoples of Eriador, including the Elves of Lindon and Rivendell. The land was rich with forests, rivers, and hills, providing both natural beauty and strategic advantage. However, Arnor's unity was not to last. By the later Third Age, tensions within the royal family led to a devastating civil war known as the Kinstrife, which erupted around TA 1409. This internal conflict fractured the kingdom into three successor realms: Arthedain to the west, Cardolan in the central regions, and Rhudaur to the east. The division weakened the overall strength and unity of the northern kingdom, leaving it vulnerable to external enemies. Rhudaur, the easternmost of the three, quickly fell under the influence of the Witch King of Angmar, a dark and powerful lord sent by Sauron to destroy Arnor once and for all. Under the Witch King's sway, Rhudaur became a puppet realm, its people either subjugated or displaced. Cardolan suffered from continual raids by orcs and other dark creatures, as well as internal unrest. Its borders shrank, and its cities were abandoned as the lands grew more dangerous and unsettled. Arthedain, the westernmost and strongest remnant of Arnor, held out the longest. Its capital was Fornost, a fortified city and symbol of Númenórean resilience. For centuries, Arthedain resisted the Witch King's relentless assaults, defending the northern lands against the spreading shadow. Despite their valor, the forces of Arthedain could not withstand the tide forever. The Battle of Fornost in TA 1975 marked the kingdom's final stand. Though aided by an alliance of elves under Gil-galad and the men of Gondor, Arthedain's armies were ultimately overwhelmed. The city fell, and the kingdom of Arnor ceased to exist as a unified realm. Yet the fall of Arnor was not the end of the noble line of Númenórean kings in the north. Out of the ruin and despair rose a secret and hardy group known as the Rangers of the North. These rangers were the descendants of the royal bloodline, who refused to surrender their heritage or the protection of their people. They became solitary wanderers and guardians, moving silently through the wilds of Eriador, preserving the memory and the mission of Arnor. The rangers lived in small bands or alone, skilled in tracking, hunting, and guerrilla warfare. They defended the roads and villages from dark creatures, orcs, and men who had turned to evil. Their presence was mostly unknown to the wider world. To most, they were mysterious figures, rumors whispered around campfires, or shadows glimpsed at the edges of the woods. The leader of the Rangers was the chieftain of the Dunedain, a title held by the direct heirs of Elendil's line. The most famous of these chieftains was Aragorn, who was raised in Rivendell under Elrond's care and trained in the arts of leadership and survival. Known for much of his life as Strider, Aragorn embodied the resilience, nobility, and quiet strength of the Rangers. The Rangers' role was both protective and preservational. They kept alive the old ways, the ancient lore, and the hope that one day the kingdoms of Arnor might be restored. Though their numbers were few and their resources limited, their courage and determination formed a vital bulwark against the dark forces that sought to dominate Middle-earth. The decline of Arnor and the rise of the Rangers of the North is a tale of endurance and quiet heroism. From the great halls of Annúminas to the wilderness trails of Eriador, the legacy of Númenor survived through these tireless guardians. Their vigilance ensured that the lands of the North remained free enough to nurture the growth of new hope, culminating in Aragorn's eventual claim to the throne. In many ways, the story of Arnor and the Rangers embodies the themes of loss, survival, and renewal that run deeply through the Third Age. Though kingdoms may fall and empires crumble, the spirit of their people and the values they uphold can endure through even the darkest of times. In conclusion, the fall of Arnor was a tragedy of division and conquest, yet it also paved the way for the rise of one of Middle-earth's most enduring legends, the Rangers of the North. Their watchful presence kept alive the promise of restoration and the hope for a future where the ancient kingdoms of men might rise again to stand against the shadow. The wizards and their secret war against Sauron, among the many secret forces moving through the great events of the Third Age, few were as enigmatic and crucial as the Astareth 5 wizards sent from the west to guide the peoples of Middle-earth in their long, bitter struggle against the shadow of Sauron. They arrived quietly, without armies or proclamations, clothed in the forms of old men. But beneath these humble exteriors lay great power and wisdom, drawn from beyond the circles of the world. Their war was not one of crowns or conquests, but of counsel, subtle influence, and unseen resistance, a war waged in shadows against the rising tide of darkness. The wizards, known as the Astari, were not mortal men, but merangelic spirits who had existed before the shaping of the world. In the distant west, in the undying lands of Aman, the Valar, the greater powers of the world, saw that Sauron's strength was returning in Middle-earth after his defeat at the end of the Second Age. But instead of sending forth armies of divine might, they chose a gentler path. They would send emissaries, beings of great power but limited in what they could do, bound to the forms of men, to inspire, guide, and assist the free peoples. Thus, 5 wizards came to Middle-earth around the year TA 1000. Their mission was to oppose Sauron, but never to dominate the wills of others. They were forbidden from using their immense power to rule, and instead were tasked with rallying the hearts and minds of elves, men, dwarves, and other free peoples against the encroaching darkness. The 5 were known by colors, denoting their order and subtle distinctions of purpose. Saruman the white, Gandalf the gray, Radagast the brown, and the 2 mysterious blue wizards, whose names were forgotten by most. Saruman, or Curunir in the Elvish tongue, was the chief of the order and considered the wisest and most knowledgeable. Tall, proud, and commanding, Saruman was deeply learned in the devices of Sauron, and he delved into the secrets of the Rings of Power and the lore of the ancient world. He established his base of operations in Isengard, a great ringed fortress in the west of Rohan, centered around the Black Tower of Orthanc. From there, he began his long watch over the movements of Sauron and the power gathering in the east. Gandalf, called Mithrandir by the Elves, was less commanding in appearance but far more beloved. He wandered widely, seldom settling in one place for long, and spent centuries walking among the peoples of Middle-earth. Gandalf was uniquely attuned to the hearts of others, able to inspire courage, uncover hidden strength, and awaken hope. Though he wielded great power, he preferred to act through advice, encouragement, and example. Unbeknownst to most, Gandalf bore one of the 3 elven rings, Narya, the Ring of Fire, gifted to him by Círdan the Shipwright upon his arrival. Radagast, the brown wizard, was more concerned with the natural world, birds, beasts, and the balance of life. He dwelt near Rosgobel, on the edge of Mirkwood, and was less directly involved in the affairs of men and elves. While often dismissed as a lesser player, Radagast's influence in rallying the creatures of nature and acting as a messenger in times of need proved valuable, even if his path veered away from the central war. The 2 blue wizards, Alatar and Palando, journeyed far into the east and south of Middle-earth, into lands largely unrecorded by the histories of the West. Though little is known of their deeds, some believe that they worked to undermine Sauron's influence among the Easterlings and Southrons, perhaps delaying his dominion and scattering his followers in subtle ways. Others speculated that they failed in their mission or even fell to darkness themselves. Whatever their fate, their absence left Saruman, Gandalf, and Radagast to shoulder the burden in the west. At first, the Astari worked together, but as centuries passed, their paths diverged. Saruman, once noble and wise, began to fall to pride. His deep study of Sauron's devices, particularly the One Ring, corrupted his mind. He came to believe that he alone could master the ring and use it to defeat Sauron, and in so doing, rule the world as a benevolent overlord. This betrayal marked a turning point in the secret war. Saruman's mind became ensnared by ambition, and through the Palantir of Orthanc-Seeing, Stonehenge came into contact with Sauron, who slowly bent his will and ensnared him in lies and illusions. By the time of the War of the Ring, Saruman had become a traitor. From Isengard, he raised an army of Uruk-hai, bred by crossing orcs and men, and sought to conquer Rohan as a stepping stone to greater power. He no longer sought to guide the free peoples, but to rule them. His betrayal fragmented the unity of the freed peoples and gave Sauron an unexpected ally in the West. Gandalf, however, remained true. He alone among the wizards fully understood the gravity of Sauron's return and the importance of the One Ring. When Bilbo Baggins found the ring in the depths of the Misty Mountains, Gandalf began to suspect its true identity. He investigated tirelessly, uncovering ancient records in Gondor and learning the history of Isildur and the ring's passage through the ages. Gandalf's efforts culminated in the Council of Elrond, where he urged the destruction of the ring. He played a key role in forming the Fellowship of the Ring, guiding Frodo, Aragorn, and the others as they embarked on their perilous quest. His battle with the Balrog in the mines of Moria was one of self-sacrifice, and his return as Gandalf the White marked his ascension to the leadership of the free peoples in Saruman's place. In his new role, Gandalf became the unifying force that brought together Rohan, Gondor, and the remaining powers of the West. He stood at the right hand of kings, rallied armies, and devised the bold strategy to distract Sauron by marching on the Black Gate, buying Frodo and Sam time to destroy the ring in secret. The secret war waged by the wizards was not one of conquest or fame. It was a war fought with restraint, wisdom, and deep moral conviction. They were meant not to lead with might, but to support others in finding their strength. Where Saruman failed by seeking dominion, Gandalf succeeded by empowering those around him. The tale of the Astari, especially Gandalf's, underscores the central theme of Middle-earth, that true strength lies not in domination, but in humility, hope, and courage. Though only one of the 5 wizards fulfilled his charge completely, it was enough. For in guiding Frodo to Mount Doom, in defending the free peoples when they stood on the brink, and in kindling hearts to resist evil, Gandalf proved that the smallest, quietest battles in the shadows could shape the fate of the world. The return of Sauron in the War of the Ring. The defining conflict of the Third Age, the War of the Ring, was the culmination of thousands of years of quiet movements, long-forgotten alliances, lingering wounds, and dark ambitions that had never truly been vanquished. Though Sauron, the Dark Lord, had been cast down at the end of the Second Age, his spirit endured, gathering strength in the shadows. The War of the Ring was not merely a clash of armies or the final act of an ancient war. It was the ultimate reckoning for the free peoples of Middle-earth, a test not only of might, but of will, of unity, and of courage against seemingly impossible odds. Sauron's return did not begin with drums or thunder. Instead, he crept back into the world like a gathering storm. After his physical form was destroyed by the last alliance at the Battle of Dagorlad, and the One Ring was cut from his finger by Isildur, Sauron's spirit lingered bodiless, but enduring. Over time, whispers of his presence emerged in the east and south. In the deep forests of southern Mirkwood, an evil presence took root, known to the wise as the necromancer of Dol Guldur. Though Sauron concealed his identity at first, the greatest of the Elves and the Astari suspected the truth. The White Council, composed of the wisest beings in Middle-earth, Elrond, Galadriel, Saruman, Gandalf, and others, confronted this shadow. For centuries, they debated and watched. Saruman, who had begun to covet the power of the ring himself, assured the others that Sauron could not rise again without it. His deception delayed decisive action. Only in TA 2941 did the council drive Sauron from Dol Guldur, but by then it was too late. The Dark Lord had returned in secret to Barad-dûr, his great fortress in Mordor, and the eye of Sauron once again watched the world with burning malice. Sauron's strength grew steadily in the decades that followed. He rebuilt Barad-dûr, marshaled the orcs of Mordor, and forged alliances with the Haradrim, the Easterlings, and other peoples drawn to power or driven by fear. He also sent forth his most dreaded servants, the Nazgûl, the ring-wraiths on missions to find the One Ring, which had vanished after Isildur's death in the Gladden Fields centuries earlier. That ring, lost to time and legend, was found not by kings or wizards, but by a creature called Gollum, who kept it in darkness beneath the misty mountains for nearly 500 years. There, it was stumbled upon by Bilbo Baggins, an unassuming hobbit of the Shire. His discovery, recounted in The Hobbit, marked the quiet beginning of Sauron's undoing. For though the Dark Lord had not known of the ring's location, it had begun to stir, calling to its master, drawing closer to the center of conflict. Gandalf the Grey, ever watchful, began to suspect the truth. He researched the ring's markings, consulted ancient scrolls in Gondor, and eventually confronted Gollum to confirm the dreadful reality. Bilbo's trinket was the One Ring. Thus began a race against time. Gandalf and Frodo Baggins, Bilbo's heir, understood that the ring could not be hidden, wielded, or used. It had to be destroyed. The Council of Elrond convened in Rivendell in TA 3018, bringing together representatives from all the free peoples, elves, dwarves, men, and hobbits. There, the Fellowship of the Ring was formed 9 companions, symbolically opposing the 9 ring-wraiths tasked with carrying the ring to Mount Doom, deep in the heart of Mordor, where it had been forged and where alone it could be unmade. As Frodo and his companions began their perilous journey, Sauron accelerated his assault on Middle-earth. His forces overran Osgiliath, breached the borders of Gondor, and launched skirmishes against Rohan. Yet Sauron remained unaware of Frodo's true mission. He believed the ring would be used against him by someone powerful, perhaps Aragorn, heir of Isildur, or one of the elves or wizards. This miscalculation proved vital. Meanwhile, the Fellowship fractured. Gandalf fell in Moria, battling the Balrog, and was presumed lost. Boromir succumbed to the ring's temptation. Frodo and Samwise Gamgee journeyed alone toward Mordor, guided and endangered by the treacherous Gollum. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli turned their attention to aiding the realms of men, defending Rohan and Gondor from Sauron's onslaught. The war reached a critical point with the Battle of Helm's Deep, where the Rohirrim, aided by Gandalf, resurrected as Gandalf the White, repelled Saruman's army of Uruk-hai. Saruman's fall removed a dangerous rival, and his fortress at Isengard was overthrown by the Ents, ancient shepherds of the forest awakened to war. Sauron responded by unleashing the full might of Mordor upon Gondor. The city of Minas Tirith faced annihilation in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, yet the courage of men held fast. The Rohirrim arrived in a thundering charge. King Theoden fell a hero, and the arrival of Aragorn with the army of the dead turned the tide. The ring-wraiths were driven off, and Sauron's armies were broken for a time. Still unaware of Frodo's journey, Sauron regrouped. To keep his gaze away from Mount Doom, Gandalf and Aragorn devised a desperate gambit: march on the Black Gate of Mordor and draw Sauron's eye. Their army was small, and the odds were grim, but the strategy worked. As Sauron poured his attention and forces toward the gate, Frodo and Sam reached Mount Doom, with Gollum ever at their heels. In the end, it was not strength or valor that defeated Sauron, but the strange grace of pity. Frodo, overcome by the ring's power, claimed it for himself at the very brink. But Gollum, obsessed and consumed, bit the ring from Frodo's hand and fell into the fires of Mount Doom, destroying it. The destruction of the One Ring shattered Sauron's power utterly. His vast armies were thrown into chaos. The Nazgûl perished in fire. Barad-dûr crumbled, and the Dark Lord's spirit, at last, was cast into the void, never to rise again. Thus ended the War of the Ring. The Third Age closed with the defeat of evil not by the proud or powerful, but by the small and humble hobbits whose courage and friendship outlasted temptation and despair. The return of Sauron and the war he waged tested every realm, every alliance, and every heart in Middle-earth. But in the end, It was unity, wisdom, and mercy that triumphed over fear, ambition, and domination. The victory came not from domination, but from sacrifice. The Fourth Age dawned with the crowning of Aragorn Elessar. The king of Gondor and Arnor reunited. Peace began to settle over Middle-earth. The elves made ready to sail. The dwarves returned to their halls, and the hobbits, though changed, returned home to rebuild. Sauron was no more, but the memory of the war, and the courage that overcame it, would echo through the ages. The Age of Men and the departure of the elves. With the destruction of the One Ring and the final fall of Sauron, the Third Age of Middle-earth came to a close. But the end of one age is the beginning of another, and with this turning of the world's great cycle, the Age of Men began. This era, long prophesied by elves and men alike, would be marked not by the works of the firstborn or the mighty dwarves, but by the rise of mortal men, their kingdoms, their cultures, and their trials. At the same time, a quiet and mournful exodus unfolded in the background. The departure of the elves, a graceful retreat of the oldest beings in Middle-earth as they passed out of time and memory into the undying lands beyond the sea. The War of the Ring had united the fractured peoples of Middle-earth in a way that had not been seen for thousands of years. The dwarves, the elves, and the men of Rohan and Gondor had stood together against the rising darkness. Yet even in victory, the world was changed. The elves, ancient and immortal, had diminished. Their magic waned. Their time in Middle-earth, long though it had been, was ending. And men, so often frail and fleeting, were now the inheritors of the world's future. At the center of this shift was Aragorn, son of Arathorn, also known as Elessar, the Elfstone, and the long-awaited king of the reunited kingdom. Upon his coronation, Aragorn took the throne of both Gondor and the lost northern realm of Arnor, uniting the divided kingdoms of Númenórean descent. His reign marked the dawn of the Fourth Age, an era of restoration and peace, at least for a time. Under King Elessar's rule, the Free Peoples found a rare moment of stability. He rebuilt Minas Tirith, restored Osgiliath, and repopulated Annúminas, the ancient capital of Arnor. He granted the Shire official protection as a free land, closed to big folk. Faramir, the noble steward of Gondor, was named Prince of Ithilien, and the lands long blighted by war began to heal. Rohan flourished under Éomer, who succeeded his uncle Theoden. Bonds of friendship between the realms of men were reforged with greater strength than ever before. And yet, not all were destined to remain in this changing world. The elves, having long felt the burden of sorrow and time, began to leave Middle-earth in ever greater numbers. The war had taken its toll not only in loss of life, but in the fading of their purpose. With the One Ring destroyed, the three elven rings also lost their power. The elven realms of Rivendell, Lothlórien, and Lindon began to fade. Galadriel, bearer of Nenya, the Ring of Water, felt the magic of Lothlórien diminish. Though her realm remained beautiful, its timeless glow began to wane. Elrond, master of Rivendell and bearer of Vilya, likewise saw that the age of his people was ending. The elves had fought long and nobly for Middle-earth, but now, as the sea called to them and the west beckoned, they knew their chapter in this world was closing. Their departure was not a flight of fear, but an act of acceptance. The elves were tied to the deeper rhythm of the world, and they knew their part in its song was reaching its final note. They would sail westward, across the Belagare, to Valinor, the undying Lansa place beyond mortal reach, where pain and sorrow could not follow. One of the most poignant departures was that of Frodo Baggins, the ring-bearer. Though the Shire was saved and peace had returned, Frodo found no healing in the land he had fought to protect. The wounds he bore both from the Morgul blade and the psychic torment of the ring never truly left him. He faded, slowly and silently, his laughter rarer, his smile thinner. Knowing he could not remain, he was granted the grace to sail west alongside the elves, to seek the healing he could not find in Middle-earth. Frodo's companions Sam, Merry, and Pippin remained behind. They lived rich lives, celebrated as heroes, and watched the Shire bloom again. But for Sam especially, Frodo's absence left a quiet ache. He would later sail west as well, the last of the ring-bearers, after a long and fulfilling life. Gandalf too departed, no longer needed in a world where the shadow had been banished. He had come as Olorin, one of the Maya sent to Gidana to Rhuland. His task was complete. Alongside Elrond, Galadriel, Frodo, and Bilbo, he boarded the White Ship at the Grey Havens, and together they passed into legend. With their departure, the last vestiges of the Firstborn's dominion came to an end. The Elves of Mirkwood, like Thranduil, remained for a time, as did a few in Lothlórien, but their days were numbered. The dwarves retreated to their halls, still proud and enduring, but diminished in number and scope. The great cities of Khazad-dûm and Erebor would echo with fewer voices in the centuries to come. Middle-earth now belonged to men. But with this dominion came great responsibility. The world was not rid of evil. Though Sauron was gone, other shadows remained. Greed, pride, envivals, not born of dark lords, but of mortal hearts. The age of men would bring its own trials, its own triumphs and tragedies. Yet Aragorn's reign set a hopeful tone. He ruled with wisdom, fairness, and compassion. He restored old alliances, respected the lands of the hobbits, and honored the service of dwarves and elves. His marriage to Arwen, daughter of Elrond, symbolized the final union of elf and Manon Echo, of Beren and Luthien, of Tuor and Idrilth, last great mingling of immortal and mortal blood. Arwen's choice to remain in Middle-earth, to forsake immortality and endure the fate of men, was a beautiful yet sorrowful gesture. When Aragorn's long life finally came to an end, she passed into solitude and grief, fading from the world with the same quiet dignity that had defined the elves for ages. The passing of the elves was not a tragedy, but a gentle twilight. It was the final sigh of an era older than memory. Their songs, once woven into the very air of the world, faded into silence. The forests grew quieter, the stars a little dimmer, but in their place rose the voices of men bold, flawed, and full of wonder. So ended the Third Age, and so began the Fourth. Though the elves departed, their legacy remained. In the ruins of Gondolin, the halls of Rivendell, and the echoes of their songs, they would not be forgotten. The Age of Men did not begin with conquest, but with remembrance. It inherited a world shaped by those who came before and was charged with the sacred task of protecting it. The journey was not over. The road stretched on, winding into ages yet to come, but the torch had been passed. From the immortal hands of the elves to the hearts of mortal men, the fate of Middle-earth now rested with those who lived brief lives but could dream great dreams. And so, in the soft westward winds, the ships faded into the golden light. The sea whispered to the shore. The stars watched silently, and the world turned. The legacy of the ring-bearers. The tale of the ring-bearers is the beating heart of the Third Age's story, not of conquerors or kings, but of unlikely heroes who bore the weight of unimaginable power across the wilds of Middle-earth. These individuals, from humble hobbits to ancient rulers, were each tested in ways no one else could understand. The One Ring did not simply grant power, it devoured will, twisted thought, and left scars that even time could not heal. And so, in the wake of Sauron's fall and the dawning of the Fourth Age, the legacy of the ring-bearers became a quiet echo of endurance, sacrifice, and the cost of victory. Though Frodo Baggins was the final bearer of the One Ring, he was not the first. The burden of the ring had passed through many handsome briefly, some for lifetimes. Each bearer left a mark on its story, and in turn, the ring left a mark upon them. The ring's earliest bearer after the fall of Sauron was Isildur, the High King of Gondor and Arnor. He took the ring as a wergold for his father Elendil, slain in the War of the Last Alliance. Though Elrond and Círdan urged him to destroy it, Isildur could not let go. He called it precious and claimed it as his right. But the ring betrayed him, as it would all who held it. At the disaster of the Gladden Fields, Isildur was ambushed by orcs, and the ring slipped from his finger as he tried to escape, rendering him visible and sealing his doom. Thus, the ring was lost for over 2 millennia, beginning a long slumber in the cold waters of the Anduin. It was not found again until it came into the hands of a store hobbit named Smeagol, later known as Gollum. On his birthday, Smeagol was given the ring by his cousin Déagol, though in truth, he murdered Déagol to take it. The ring's influence corrupted Smeagol rapidly, turning him into the twisted, wretched creature Gollum. He retreated beneath the misty mountains, hiding with the ring in the dark for nearly 500 years. During that time, his mind fractured, consumed by obsession and isolation. He called it "my precious," the same words Isildur once used, showing how the ring's grip tightened even on the most innocent of hearts. Then, by Chancer Fatit, came into the possession of Bilbo Baggins, a hobbit of the Shire. Bilbo found the ring while lost in Gollum's cave, and won it through a game of riddles. At the time, he had no idea of its true nature. To him, it was a curious trinket, a magical aid that let him move unseen. But even Bilbo, in his simplicity and good-heartedness, was changed. The ring extended his life, fostered a growing possessiveness, and made parting with it almost unbearable. It took all of Gandalf's urging and Bilbo's own inner strength for him to finally let it go when he left Bag End. And so, the ring passed to Frodo, Bilbo's heir. Frodo's journey was unlike any other. Unlike Isildur, who claimed it, or Gollum, who was consumed by it, Frodo was given the ring as a burden, not a prize. He did not seek its power. He feared it, resisted it, and ultimately sought to destroy it. But the weight of the ring, both physical and spiritual, wore him down. The long road to Mordor, filled with pain, terror, and despair, left wounds deeper than flesh. Frodo carried the ring farther than any mortal before him into the very heart of Sauron's dominion, to the slopes of Mount Doom. But even he, the most determined and pure-hearted bearer, could not cast it away in the end. At the crack of doom, Frodo succumbed, claiming the ring as his own. It was only Gollum, driven by obsession, who inadvertently destroyed it, biting the ring from Frodo's hand and falling into the fire. This failure did not tarnish Frodo's legacy. Rather, it revealed the truth, that no one could carry the ring forever and remain untouched. Frodo's strength lay not in being immune, but in enduring its torment for as long as he did, and in showing mercy to Gollum, a mercy that ultimately saved the world. Frodo's journey left him forever changed. Though he returned to the Shire, it no longer felt like home. The wound from the Morgul blade, the psychological toll of the ring, and the sheer weight of memory were too much. He was a hero among hobbits, yet he felt apart from them, disconnected, as though he walked in two worlds. In time, the offer was made, to sail across the sea to the undying lands, a rare gift granted to mortals. There, in the timeless realm of Valinor, Frodo might find the healing he could not find in Middle-earth. Samwise Gamgee, too, bore the ring if only briefly. When he believed Frodo dead, Sam took the ring and carried it through Mordor, resisting its temptations with a strength of will unmatched by most. His loyalty, humility, and unshakable love for Frodo anchored him. When the moment came, he returned the ring without hesitation. That act alone distinguished him from many before him. For his brief bearing of the ring, Sam was also granted the right to sail west. But he remained in Middle-earth until old age, living a rich life as mayor of the Shire, husband to Rosie Cotton, and father of many children. In the end, when his time came, he too sailed across the sea, joining Frodo and Bilbo in the west. Thus, there were 5 ring-bearers who ultimately departed from Middle-earth: Frodo, Bilbo, Sam, Gandalf, and Galadriel. Each had borne one of the great ringsome in triumph. Others in sorrow, and each had earned their place in the undying lands. There, beyond the world of men, it was said they would find rest, healing, and peace. The legacy of the ring-bearers lives on not just in song and story, but in the very fabric of the Fourth Age. They showed that greatness could come from the smallest hands, and that power, unchecked, devours the soul. Their tale is not simply one of evil defeated, but of sacrifice embraced, of wounds borne in silence, and of courage found in the most unlikely of hearts. The Shire, though healed, remembered. The Red Book of Westmarch, begun by Bilbo and continued by Frodo and Sam, became the record of these events. In it were preserved the details of the ring's long and terrible journey and the quiet heroism that ensured its end. The ring-bearers did not seek glory, nor did they receive parades. Their victories were hard won, their pain unseen by most. But without them, Middle-earth would have fallen. Their endurance, their resilience, and their mercy shaped an age and saved a world. And though they are gone, their light remains in gardens tended, in stories told, and in the stars above, where whispers of their journey drift like echoes in the night. Memory, myth, and the enduring magic of the Third Age. As the last golden leaves of Lothlórien drifted to the forest floor, and the final white ships passed into the west, beyond the sight of mortal eyes, the Third Age of Middle-earth faded into history. But not into forgetfulness. For while time marched forward into the dominion of men and the practical concerns of mortal realms, the stories, the songs, and the subtle magic of the Third Age did not vanish. They became memory, they became myth, and in myth they gained a kind of immortality, lingering enchantment that would echo long after elves ceased to sing and the stars of the elven kind dimmed in the skies. This was the final transformation of the world, from a place of direct enchantment, where miracles walked openly under the sun, into a realm where such wonder had to be remembered to survive. The world had grown quieter, more solid. The fiery brilliance of the Valar no longer stirred the earth. The great powers no longer manifested in kingdoms of light or shadow. But what endured was story, and in those stories, the Third Age remained alive. The magic of the Third Age was never only in spells or weapons, but in presence, the presence of beings and moments that defied explanation. In the quiet strength of a hobbit carrying a burden far heavier than his stature suggested, in the stillness of Lothlórien's golden woods, where time seemed to pause, as if even the stars bowed to its serenity. In the thunder of hooves across the fields of the Pelennor, where the Rohirrim rode against certain death with songs on their lips, in the haunting wail of the Nazgûl, and the unyielding light of Galadriel's phial. These were glimpses of a world touched by the divine, where myth walked side by side with mortals. But now, that world was changing. Elves, the firstborn of the world, were fading. Their beauty, their sorrow, and their immense wisdom had shaped the very lands of Middle-earth. With their departure, the days of wonder waned. It was not a fall into darkness, but a soft retreat of twilight like the sun dipping beneath the sea, leaving only an afterglow on the water. What was left was quieter, subtler. The magic did not vanish. It withdrew into memory. And memory, in Middle-earth, became story. The Red Book of Westmarch, begun by Bilbo, continued by Frodo, and finished by Sam, became a vessel of this fading light. It was more than a diary. It was a chronicle of wonder, a tapestry of all that had come before. In its pages lived the tales of the Shire, of Rivendell, of the great journey across Rohan and Gondor, through Shelob's lair, and up the desolate slopes of Mount Doom. It preserved not just facts, but feelings, not just deeds, but dreams. In the Shire, these tales became bedtime stories for young hobbits, tales of brave Frodo and loyal Sam, of Peregrine, took the guard of Gondor, and Meriadoc Brandybuck, the esquire of Rohan. In Gondor and Rohan, songs were sung of Elisar and Eomer, of Arwen Evenstar's sacrifice, and of the last ride of the Rohirrim. And though most men would never see an elf or touch a relic of Númenor, the memory of such things lingered like perfume in an empty room, suggesting their presence, even if no longer seen. The end of the Third Age was also the end of the direct intervention of the Valar, the Istari. The wizards who had guided and guarded the peoples of Middle-earth for centuries had fulfilled their task. Gandalf, the last and greatest of them, returned across the sea. No new wizard would come to take his place. The world of mortals would now govern itself, its triumphs and tragedies fully its own. There would be no more eagles appearing at the last moment, no more enchanted gifts from immortal queens. The world was becoming our own, a world of choice, of agency, of slow-building hope rather than sudden salvation. Yet the wonder was not gone. It had simply changed form. It was there in the first sapling of the white tree of Gondor, blooming in the courts of Minas Tirith, a symbol of rebirth and renewal. It was there in the stewardship of King Elisar, who ruled not as a tyrant, but as a healer, a restorer of balance and dignity. It lived in the laughter of children in the Shire, in the stonework of Gimli's glittering caverns in Aglarond, and in the songs that echoed through the restored halls of Minas Tirith on midsummer nights. Magic had passed into the hearts of the people, and from there into story, and in story it would never die. The transition from myth to memory was not a loss, but a transformation. Just as Frodo could not remain in the Shire after carrying the ring, Middle-earth could not remain in its enchanted state after bearing the weight of 3 great ages. The world had been reshaped by pain, courage, and sacrifice. The Third Age did not vanish, it matured. It was no longer an age of miracles, but an age of meaning. Even the smallest places, like Bag End and Brandy Hall, bore the weight of legend now. A simple hobbit hole could be the birthplace of a journey that saved the world. And that was the final gift of the Third Age. The knowledge that greatness could come from anywhere, that stories worth remembering could be born in quiet corners, in hidden glades, or at second breakfasts. In time, as the Fourth Age marched on, the stories of the Third Age became harder to believe. Elves became legends. Dwarves retreated into mountain halls. The great beasts, balrogs, dragons, even the mighty eagles vanished from sight. Men built cities, fought new wars, and often forgot the ancient tales. But in every age, there were still those who looked to the stars, or wandered through an old forest, or opened an ancient book, and felt the echo of something more. That echo was the Third Age. It is there still in the hush before dawn, in the light of a candle that never flickers, in the old songs sung quietly by a fire, in the courage of someone who chooses kindness over cruelty, in the resilience of those who stand, quietly and faithfully, against the shadow, no matter how small they are. The world may change, but the heart of the Third Age, the courage, the love, the hope endures. It whispers to us through memory. It breathes through myth. And if we listen closely, we can still hear it.